And we are back for episode number 4 of ClubCast. This time we are going to be focusing more on the American League West and just the American League in general. Last week we focused a lot on the National League. This time we're pivoting to the American League, and there's a lot to talk about, especially big news today with Otani, or late last night actually, but that's kind of changing the landscape for maybe not the MVP this year, but definitely free agency next year. Um, but yeah, so just jumping straight into it. Obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, Shohei Otani has a tear in his UCL.
Oof.
It's the second time in his major league career that he's had such an injury. It looks like they're going to try to hold off surgery, but
Harper 2.0.
I've seen this story too many times, especially with the Dodgers. Players try to hold off, and inevitably they end up just getting the surgery. If that does happen, it would be his second Tommy John in like what
5 years. I
five
think it was
years.
2018.
So that's pretty scary as a player and as a fan of his, or if you're a potential fan of a team that is hopes to sign him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's been having a really good year. I'm interested. What do you think? How big of a blow is it not only to him, the Angels, but just the MLB landscape in general that he's going to be out?
Like you said, man, free agency is it's flipped on his fucking head. Like he was the guy. Who else? Like there's not. It's not a big free agent class. I don't want to talk a ton about that, but it's not a big free agent class. You have these big teams. What is he going to get now? I mean, he's a DH. He's Bryce Harper for the next year and a half. Um, Probably will never be the same pitcher again. Like it sucks. It sucks for MLB. It sucks for everybody. It sucks for Ben Verlander. I know that,
Oh,
but but he'll probably pitch. I would say eventually, um, but I don't think it'll ever be the same
yeah,
Otani. It's just crazy to think about how quick that shit can happen. Uh, yeah, I mean the Angels are out of it anyway, but next year, what does he get? Does he get a 1 year deal somewhere to DH?
yeah.
Because that's like nobody wants to pay a DH. Does he get that, or does somebody just say, let's just take our shot now because now is the best chance?
Yeah, he definitely, him and his camp, they do not have. They were supposed to be having a fun off season. It looks like they're going to have to weigh a lot of options. He
Yeah,
still is eligible to receive the qualifying offer, which is, I think, when I was reading on Twitter today, it's probably going to be around 19 to 22 million for him. That seems like a bargain, even
yeah,
if he is just a DH. So I imagine the Angels will probably still offer it to him, just so they can get the draft pick for him.
yeah.
Um, but I imagine, in short, I just think a lot more teams have entered the Otani sweepstakes because I don't know what type of deal he's going to get. And I think, like you mentioned, we're not really going to talk about it too long with the free agency class, but he was the best one. He was the one that was probably going to hold up the market. That everyone was going to wait until he signed. And now I'm just kind of, a lot of teams are going to be cautious. So obviously losing him isn't the biggest blow to the Angels because they're already pretty much done. They were pretty much done almost a week after the trade deadline when they lost almost 10 in a row.
Yeah.
Um, Another big news for them is Mike Trout also came back for
Okay.
2 days and went back straight to the IL. I don't imagine they would. I think he's probably done for the year. I don't imagine why you would want him to come back.
No.
Um, and Otani, even they said he traveled with the team and he plans on DHing still. So, I mean, I'm kind of interested to see maybe if he still feels a little fatigued.
Yeah.
If I was him, I just wouldn't play. I don't know if that's his mentality, but he's fighting for the MVP.
Mm-hmm.
He leads the American League and the MLB in WAR. Um, I think he could not step foot on the baseball diamond for the rest of the year, and he would probably still win the MVP just because of the season he's put up until this point. Um, if he likely still plays, he will probably run away with the MVP again, his second in 3 years. But there's a lot of names in the American League that you could talk about on some of these other teams that are playing really good baseball. And obviously, because the Otani clause, because he pitches, because he and bats well, he's leading going back and forth with Olsen for the home run race. Um, these guys in the American League get overlooked. So I'm interested if there's one name or a few names that you have in the American League that are really poised to be in that top three of the MVP.
Yeah, I think there's three tiers, I would say. Maybe not three players, but three tiers. You have your upper echelon boys. You have Shohei Otani. You have hitter Otani and pitcher Otani, if you could call them boys. But Otani's in tier by himself. I agree with you. I think if he doesn't play again, I mean, he had a 3.16 ERA. He has 44 home runs. He had like 140 strikeouts or something. I don't know. I lost my notes, but yeah, some crazy shit. The next tier is one guy that wins most other years, I would say, is Corey Seager. I'm sure you're happy to see this, but he's hitting like 350. He has 20 some home runs or almost 20 home runs. He's got close to 1,000 OPS. He's I think he's second or third in WAR in the AL. I think he's having a crazy year. It's good to see Corey Seager back. I mean, he's one of the sweetest left-handed swings. I mean, I don't have to preach about that to you, but it's good to see Corey Seager back, of course. And then in the third tier would compete in most years. I think we'll all be around that 3, 4, 5. And Marcus Simeon, he's always seems to be there. Hits well, plays a really good defensive second base. That's the only kind of slight on him. It's more of a second baseman.
Yeah.
Uh, Luis Robert, he's been hitting tanks. He's raking out in Chicago. But again, it's just like a really good season to me. It's not anything crazy. And then I like Adolis Garcia, man. He's dope out there. He's a good defensive outfielder, hits for power. His average is a little down, but the Texas Rangers are good, man. They have some guys out there. I mean, obviously they have Seager and Simeon, but Adolis Garcia has been a dog for that lineup too.
Yeah, he is a name that kind of flies under the radar
Yeah,
because he's been doing it all season for the Rangers. And, I think that the American League West has like the MVP race,
yeah.
and it is because of the divisional race. And one name that you mentioned, Corey Seager, is definitely slowly but surely making his way to build a case for potentially winning an MVP in the American League one day. He definitely had the potential to do it in the National League. He finished runner up to MVP in his rookie year.
Yeah.
And that's just the potential of a player that we knew the Dodgers had. Um, Going to Arlington and playing in that stadium, I imagine he probably wanted to go back to the Rangers after the 2020 postseason and the tear he went on, because this season has been nothing short of a tear when he's been playing. I think the only thing that hurts Seager's case um, to finish higher is the same thing that's hurt his case in years past, and that's he always has found a way to end up on the injuries list.
Yeah.
He's been there a couple times this year. He missed, I believe, a couple weeks with um, not a severe hamstring, not a complete tear, but enough to keep him out for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
But even just for the short time he missed, he still has a 340 batting average. He's still hitting home runs. He's actually playing a pretty good shortstop. I used to think he was kind of not the best defensive shortstop out there, but he's really holding it down for the Rangers out there. And you know, he's got a 184 OPS. He's got the RBI numbers. He's the Rangers signed him to be the face of the franchise, and I certainly think even though they have brought in a lot of good names, um, and they're probably poised to do more in the next couple years. But he definitely signed a deal to be the face of the Texas Rangers, and I certainly think so far in his contract he's lived up to that. Especially as the Rangers get ready to make that postseason push. But one name that I think goes really under the radar is Kyle Tucker, because I just think as a baseball player, he's probably the most well-rounded player you can get. He feels his defensive position well. He hits well. He can run the bases. He can steal some bases. He's just an all-around hitter. No batting gloves. Just gets right into the batter's box. Got that quirky stance, and he's just a hitter, dude. And the Astros are having probably a down year for them. They're not running away with the division. I mean, I saw people on Twitter mentioning it about it. One bad week from the Astros, and they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's really what they're looking at right now. So they can't like stumble at all. But out of all that, like Kyle Tucker has probably he's not the face of the Astros, but I think he's the best player on the Astros. And that's saying something, especially with guys that they have. I love Yordan Alvarez because he's a great hitter, but he is a DH. You put him out in left field, it kind of it's a little wary out there. They rather him just be a hitter only. But Kyle Tucker, man, he's got he's almost at a 300 batting average. He's got a 901 OPS. He's got 24 home runs and 92 RBIs. So you're looking at probably by the end of the year, he's probably going to hit over 30, have over 100 RBIs. That's some stuff that's going to get you top 3 MVP consideration, especially if Houston somehow finds a way out of everything that's happened to them this year to win the division. It's definitely Kyle Tucker. He's been a really great part of the Astros' success this year. And I just don't think he gets talked about enough, but I feel like the voters are still going to put him in that top 3. So if I had to like put it in the top 3 right now, it would definitely be Ohtani, Tucker's, and then I think Seager. I think, like you mentioned, Robert, he kind of fell out. All the drama with the White Sox too. It's kind of overtaken his season that he's been having. But yeah, definitely the American League MVP. It's a lot more interesting than we'll give it credit for.
Yeah, I hated the last 2 minutes that you just talked about the Astros. Um, but yeah, Kyle Tucker, man, he tried to talk trash and all that stuff, but like you said, man, he's a ball player. Like he does everything well. He hits both sides. He catches or he fields well. He throws well. He runs well. He's a really good baseball player. And yeah, dog, no batting gloves, weird ass
Yeah,
stance. That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
If Kyle Tucker gets 100 RBIs and 30 home runs and he's still hitting upper 200s, I think he's probably up there as at least the third.
yeah.
Depends on what Seager does towards the end of the year, but I agree with your list. I would say Ohtani, Seager, Tucker.
Yeah, and the Astros do have a decision on him. They haven't really given out big contracts. I believe he has one more year left, and they tried extension talks, and I don't think they worked out. So it looks like this may be the last year they can try to extend him, or he's going to test the market. But staying out in the American League West, we talked about a lot of players there. This division since last week has gotten a lot more interesting. The Mariners, as we know, they've been on a tear since the All-Star break, even after the trade deadline where they traded away like their All-Star closer and Paul Sewald. They are firing on all cylinders, and they have made this race a lot more interesting. I believe when at the time I took these notes, each team was separated at least by like a game or two. The Astros, they've kind of been playing 500 ball. They haven't gotten on a roll. And then the Rangers, they just got off of a 6-game losing streak where they're barely hanging on to this American League West, a division that they've led, I think, pretty much all year since like April. I think only maybe a couple days that they didn't have first place. So a lot of different scenarios can play out for this American League West. I'm interested to see if you had to pick today, who do you think is going to be winning this division come October?
So, as you know, I'm a car salesman, so I'm going to walk you around in circles until and not answer your question. Yeah, I was looking at the odds earlier, like percentage wise. The Astros still have an 84% chance to make the playoffs. They have more than the Rangers, who have 77, and the Mariners have 65. Which, dude, the Mariners, man, they're fun. We always love the Mariners. They're real fun. They're super hot. 23 of 30, they've won. Um, Very similar to last year. Towards the end of the year, they won all those games and had like a Cinderella run against the Blue Jays, which gives them a little bit of experience too in the playoffs, which might help them out a little bit. Um, but when you get to the next round, you got to play the actually good teams. I wouldn't say the Mariners are a bad team, but I wouldn't say they were like a top team that could contend. Um, you go up against then the Rangers maybe, which is the same kind of team, like the same structure, but they're definitely more talented. They're better. They're deeper. They have had injuries to Evaldi, Degrom, Odorizzi. Josh Young was hurt. All these guys are gonna hurt definitely. Young's, I don't. Some of them are coming back. Some of them aren't. So they'll have some people back for the playoffs at least. Um, it's just deeper, and I think their pitching's better, which might give me the edge to the Rangers. But they're really, really similar teams. Um, and then finally, the Astros, man. The Astros. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna say what we always say. The Astros, the roster's not the same as it used to be, man. They have a lot of that top end talent, but they don't have the deeper guys like the role players like the Chaz McCormick who will jump into the right field wall and catch the ball in Game 5 of the World Series. Like somebody like that to do the little things. That's why I think they're stuttering a little bit coming towards the end of the year. But they make the playoffs. I still think they make the playoffs. But if one of these teams get hot, man, we saw it last year with the Phils. I'm going to bring it up. We saw last year with the Phils. If one of these teams get hot with like the Mariners or the Rangers and have, two good pitchers and have two good games, I mean, they're done. Anybody can win in a 3-game series. Most teams can win in a 5-game series, I believe. So it's really, really tight. I think the Rangers win the West, though.
Yeah. It's really interesting to look because there's not really many division races that are close anymore this season. I mean, the closest were the Central divisions, but now even they've kind of separated themselves. The Twins, they're getting their bigger lead now day by day as the Guardians keep losing more and more games. The National League Central is a little interesting. You got the Cubs they've kind of cooled off a bit, but you have the Reds and then the Brewers who somehow, despite all odds, find ways to win ball games.
Yeah.
But it's still looking like that they're going to separate themselves enough to win their division. Obviously, the Phillies are a playoff team, but the Braves have been so good that division's been won probably for the past probably since the start of the season when they got off to that hot start. And then the National League West, it was really close before the All-Star break. The Dodgers were only 0.5 games up on the Diamondbacks when we went into the break, and everybody else was within 5 games. Even the Padres weren't that far back. They were, I think, like maybe 7 or 9 games within. Now each team, I believe the Diamondback, after the Giants got dismantled by the Phillies this past week, the Diamondbacks are behind in second place at like 12 games. So that's not close anymore. So this division, and with the way that these teams are playing, it looks like it's going to be back and forth, probably all the way throughout September. And they have a couple matchups with each other from the end of August to October. So there's some swinging that's going to go around in these division standings. I look at the Rangers, and it just screams to me that they're going to like somehow lead this division all year and lose on like the last like a couple days of the season. Kind of shades of the Mets blowing the division lead last year and ending up playing in a wild card game. And then I don't know, me and you've talked about it. I don't know how confident I am in the Rangers to win a playoff series. I just feel like they're one of those teams that dominates the regular season. Got a lot of young players. They got veterans on that team, but a lot of those veterans are getting a little hurt, and I don't know. I mean, Max Scherzer, I'm 50-50 on. I don't know where his head's going to be at come playoff time. And Evaldi, he's still trying to battle back from injury. So those are guys that you're supposed to be depending on down the stretch. Um, they got the offense to do it. We talked about Corey Seager. We talked about Simeon. We talked about Garcia. I mean, they've had some injuries in the lineup, but it's still good enough to get them going. But we're already starting to see them fall a little bit. Like losing 6 games this late in the season, that is kind of concerning. Um, so I don't think I could put them winning this division, even though they're first right now. And it just seems like they've lost so much ground that it's just like inevitably gonna happen when they're ending up probably finishing second or third. The Mariners, man, they've been as hot as any team can be. I believe since the All-Star break, they have their, or at least the trade deadline, they have the most wins or
Yeah.
tied for the most wins in baseball. They have 32 wins in their past 45 games. That's pretty crazy for this Mariners team. And they got off to the start of the season super cold. And a lot of it was because their offense was so inconsistent. I remember I went to a Phillies game where the Mariners were in town and they couldn't hit anything. And their offense looked completely lost. J Rod looked completely lost, and he was one of those guys that kept their season afloat last year. He was one of the reasons they made the playoffs last year because of how his rookie year was. Um, and now we're starting to see, you know, the real J Rod stood up. You know, Julio Rodriguez has stepped up for the Mariners and down this stretch. But then you got role guys, you know, Cal Raleigh, you know, all these guys. You don't need a team full of superstars to win a division or to win ball games. And a lot of teams in the league have shown that the past couple years. You just got to play smart and find ways to win. And every once in a while, you'll have a player or two get really hot, like J Rod's been, and he'll get 14 hits in like what 4 games.
Yeah.
It's like unheard of. But then, unfortunately, I think about it, and no matter how bad the Astros have played this year, I just think somehow, some way, they finish first. I'm never gonna count. I'm always gonna, if I'm betting, I'm gonna bet on the guy that's shown it in the past. And they have the grit. They still have a lot of players that have been on those postseason teams these past couple years. I mean, the only year the Astros haven't finished first in the division was during in these past couple seasons that they've been on it's like 6 or 7 straight ALCS appearances. Only 1 year they didn't finish first in the division. That was 2020, and they actually finished under 500 and lost to the A's that year. But you know, I feel like once they traded for Verlander, that kind of really changed my opinion, because then it's like they got their guy back, and that's a guy who's not only, I mean, you hear all the diva talk and all that stuff about Verlander. At the end of the day, the Astros traded for him for a reason. They gave up top prospects to get him back for a reason. I'm not sure why they didn't just sign him out in the offseason if they wanted him this bad. But he not only is he a leader there, he's a franchise icon, and he's a winner. He wants to win, and he's in the environment where he has the best chance to win. Um, I just think they're only a game behind the Rangers right now, and then the Mariners are a game behind them. They did get their asses kicked by the Mariners this past weekend, and they got swept. But you know, sometimes you have bad stretches, and I just think somehow, some way, the Astros find a way to win this division just because they've done it before. And I get a lot of 2018 Dodger vibes from this team, where they're going to be in it until the last day, and then they'll end up probably taking the division. So I'm going to go with the Astros. If the season ended today, I'm actually going to go Astros, Mariners, Rangers.
Yeah, I think the Verlander thing was really big. Like, dude, the Mets are. I want to say some bad words. The Mets are dumb for that, man. Why would you trade him back to Houston, where he was literally the best pitcher in the league, like by far? And then like, oh, let's just give him more people. Like, I know they're not in it, but like, come on, man. You couldn't find anybody else.
Yeah.
Like you said, I hate Verlander, and the Phillies own Verlander, but he's a winner. He goes places and he wins, and he's really good, and it doesn't matter. Like he'll be an ace, and he'll go and win you a playoff game. Um, maybe I'm hoping more than thinking that the Rangers will beat out the Astros. I definitely don't believe in them. I want to believe in the Mariners though. I want to believe in the Mariners, but I just don't because it's the Mariners and they always find a way to lose. I feel like in the bigger moments, but yeah, I don't blame you at all for putting the Astros
Yeah,
first.
I mean, when it comes to it, when you get to most of these games, especially these series that they have against each other in September, it's not going to feel like regular season games. They're going to feel like playoff games. And there's only one team that has the most experience out of all three of these teams, and that's the Astros.
Yeah.
And whether it's management with Dusty Baker down there or the players that have been there, done that, um, the Astros just time and time again, they just show up when it matters, man. Like they're just one of the clutch teams when they get close. Like obviously, like in years past, they've won well over 100 games, but you know, you don't always need to win and dominate the regular season. You just got to get hot at the right time. And I feel like the Astros, you know, they're struggling a little bit right now, but I trust them to straighten it up. I don't know how much I can trust the Rangers. They have a lot of veterans, but I just trust the Astros more. And then the Mariners, like you said, I want to trust them so bad, but they're a very young team with a manager who's only been in the postseason once, and a lot of these guys, you know, they haven't really played playoff baseball. So, I mean, we saw it when they played the Astros last year in the ALDS. You know, they kind of they they kept it close in a lot of those games, but the Astros just looked like they weren't. It wasn't anything to them. It was just another Tuesday night for them, and the Mariners played their hearts out, and they still lost. So, you know, I hate to say it because I don't like the Astros. You don't like the Astros, but they're just one of those teams. They're like the modern day Yankees. We just hate them because
Good.
they find ways to win. They get the players that everybody hates. You know, Verlander goes back there, so you know, um, it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out because if, like I said, if the Rangers end up losing this division, it shades of Mets. I might as well call it LOL Rangers because they would be losing the division, and then if they lose the division, it doesn't matter which like seed they are in the standings at that point because now you're playing a 3-game series. Anything can happen in a 3-game series, and I don't care who you throw out there. And if they play the wrong team at the wrong time, you may be looking. I thought originally they were going to be an ALDS exit. They may be a wild card exit at this point, and that would be. I think you could say that would be a disappointment for the Rangers just the way they've played this year. You know, especially with Bochy and all the players that they have. You know, everything that they put in, they put all the chips in pretty much on this year. Um, so if they don't win the division, that's kind of going to be disappointing for them.
Yeah, I agree. They've spent so much money, which I like. I love people spending money. But you got to win. Like you got to get to the end. You got to get to the finish line. Um, yeah, it would be a real disaster, especially coming from that first series when everybody thought they were the bad team, and they swept the Phillies, the National League champs, and everybody was like, "Oh, the Phillies suck now." And now it's like the Rangers were this good team, and now they're gonna fold. Like that would be an utter disaster. Speaking of utter disasters, though, the fucking Yankees, dude, we have not seen the Yankees have a losing season ever in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And now that they're in dead last place, they're under 500. They don't look like they want to win. Fucking Aaron Boone's on the Talking Baseball podcast trying to like defend his life on like for what he's doing. I don't know what's going on with the Yankees. What do you think is going on with the Yankees?
You know, it kind of throws it a little punch in my face because at the beginning of the season, when I'm thinking of like who I want to see, I thought the Yankees were finally going to put it all together this year, and I thought they were going to finally make it to the World Series. Just because I don't think that's a bad thing to say when you looked at it spring training, because their rotation was deep. You know, they had Garrett Cole, they signed Carlos Rodon, even Nestor Cortez, and then Who's the guy that threw the perfect
Yeah,
game?
you had Herman, you had
And then
Marino.
yeah, Severino, and he's supposed to be a free agent next year. This is his bank year, and he's been awful. And Rodon, I Dodger fans were hammering to get Carlos Rodon, and I said, stay the hell away. This dude has only shown like 2.5 years of actual good baseball. Like he's always been super hyped. You know that meme that's going around on like Twitter. It was like, all right, it was like talents down here, and then like
Yeah,
hype is like
yep.
right up here. That's Carlos Rodon because that's all I've heard ever since he was a prospect with the White Sox, and he's always had something wrong. And then there was the whole thing where it was something. It was what was it? It was like his back or his spine. Like they were saying he may not throw a base like a pitch this season. Then they were talking about he may just be done. Period. Like this may be like a it's kind of similar to the Trout thing where they're like this is chronic. Like this isn't going away. He's going to deal with this for the rest of his career. And that's what happens when you start like once baseball players, athletes start turning 30 years old, there's no fixing and rehabbing certain stuff in your body. It's like that's it. That's what you're dealing with now. You have to find ways to adapt to it now. Once he goes down, the Yankees pitching staff kind of falls all on Garrett Cole, which he's been really good for the Yankees this year. I mean, you're talking about one free agent signing, like where it's an actual free agent. Yeah, that's probably their only really good free agent signing this probably the past 10 years. And he's been worth every penny. Obviously, Judge, he's been really good. He just been hurt for a majority of the season, thanks to Dodger Stadium where he like did whatever he did to his toe. Um, and other than that, and the bullpen for the Yankees has been really good too. It's been one of the best in the league. But now even that they're starting to crumble because I don't care how good your bullpen is. When you're overworked, you're inevitably going to fall apart, and that happens especially when the morale's gone. Because if you look at the Yankees, they look like they don't want to be there. Yankees fans already knew. They knew by the All-Star break that this season isn't it. Like it's nothing's going their way, and there's a couple things you can talk about, and I'm interested to see what you think about it as well because we talked about it behind the scenes. But I think the biggest thing is their player development. I, for whatever reason, the teams in their own division they know how to develop baseball players. Whether it's the Rays, the Red Sox, the Orioles, and even the Blue Jays. I mean, we've seen them have superstars come up with Bo Bichette, Vladdy, the Orioles, they have a whole, they still have prospects in the farm system that are waiting to come up. So their window is far from over. And the Rays, they're just creative. Um, that goes to the player development side. And we talked about Jason Dominguez. I mean, he was what I looked it up in 2020. He was the number one overall prospect in 2020. I think he's not even on the top 100 anymore. I don't think he's on there. And when they for their midseason power rankings for the prospects, the Yankees were ranked. They were ranked 21st on MLB Pipeline for overall prospects, and I think every team in their division was ranked ahead of them. So that's cause for concern. And that's I don't Yankees fans could say, obviously Ryan Cashman's been there forever. Firing Cashman doesn't fix that because just because the GM or the president of baseball off goes doesn't mean the player development people go. You're talking about tens to like hundreds of people that are employed that are in charge of player development all the way from single A to or like the training leagues from when these guys are drafted all the way up to triple A. But I'm interested to see what you think is the biggest issue if there's more.
Um, I'll find another one, but I want to talk about the player development first because I'm a player development guy. Yeah, I saw 23rd on like I don't know, Baseball Reference or something. 23rd ranked farm system. Like I know they're one of these teams like the Braves, like the Dodgers. It just seemed the Astros. It just seemed to win and find ways to win. But if you look at these teams like the Braves, the Dodgers, the Astros, what do? They develop their players. Like they're not they buy players, yeah, but they don't they also have to develop your players. I wrote on my thing, it seems like they have a lot of different things going on. Like you have your stars, you have Cole, you have Aaron Judge, then you have like the aging veterans who are all underperforming at the same time. You have Stanton, Donaldson, and Rizzo after Tatis hit him in the face, sneed him in the face, and LeMahieu, who's been a disappointment this year, but he's been so good for so long, underrated. And then you have the young guys like Volpe, Peraza, Oswaldo Cabrera, those kind of guys who are not really doing anything either. I mean, some of them are, they're showing their flashes that they'll probably be good, but it seems like another case of that, farm development. I think that's my other problem with the team. I think they don't really have a direction. I think they're kind of just like floating to be like, hey, we're the Yankees. We're supposed to win. Like, yeah, it's because you try to win. It's not because you just win. Um, I'll leave it at what I wrote for my first note is literally said seem disinterested to win. I just think that's
Yeah.
really.
I think another thing with player development is just I talked about the contracts with Garrett Cole, and that's been like the only one, but it seems like I think the Yankees are stuck in a pre 2010 mindset when it comes to fielding a team and competing, where all these big market teams, Boston, LA, do you know who they hired from? They hired from the Rays, who are the like small market of small market,
Yeah.
and that's the creative innovativeness that these new GMs are bringing now. And now these teams that have large payrolls are incorporating that mindset to their teams. And that's the reason why, I mean, the Dodgers and the Braves and the Red Sox are kind of in the process like that, even though they may not make the playoffs this year. They made it in 21, shocked everybody, and they're kind of revamping their farm and getting ready. These teams in mind, like the way the Dodgers operate, is they want a deep farm system. They want to develop that farm system, but they also want to spend money on players that they think are worth that money. And that goes to scouting and a whole lot more, like just because you see a guy like one of the biggest mistakes I think the Yankees have made is trading for Stanton. And it seems like the Marlins, no matter what prospect return package was, it's just the Marlins escaped that big deal and the Yankees had to eat it all. And I know the Yankees fans that grew up in like the 90s and the early 2000s when they were going on that championship run, um, the Yankees don't spend like that anymore. They aren't gonna. They kind of went cheapskate the past 2 years. I mean, really. I mean, I thought it was surprising that they brought Judge back. I really thought Judge was gonna leave. I
Yeah.
thought they weren't gonna pay him up, but I just think it was gonna be such a big story if he left that everybody. If Yankees fans are mad now, they would have really mad if Judge left in free agency. Um, but they haven't won a World Series or even been to a World Series since 2009. And that's shocking in itself. Their division is continuously getting harder, and Brian Cashman, he's been there for 25 years. Yeah, he's one of the longest tenured um, GM, president of baseball ops in the game, and I don't know if his job's entirely safe, but I think it more than so likely is until I don't really know because I mean he is a good tenured like general manager. Like he has the pedigree, but a lot of that was from early on in his career. I think you really have to just start thinking and looking inward and saying, all right, how can we change and how can we adapt? And I don't know if the Yankees with Cashman and the current crew can do that. And it seems like every time they try to get like into the numbers, they get burnt because, like, one of the biggest baseball oddities is Joey Gallo, and that's the statistical mind game where, like, Joey Gallo's not that bad of a player. His batting average is awful, but there's a lot of upside with all these other numbers. Well, the Yankees finally listened to it and they traded for him, and he was fucking awful. And Yankees fans hated him so much that they ended up trading him away. And that's the type of trades that they've made. It seems like they try to outsmart everyone, but then they look stupid doing it. Because then, all right, instead of signing, all right, actually, here's the big problem. They needed a shortstop. I know they have like Peraza, Volpe, and all these other guys, but I mean, the only one that's in the majors is Volpe. The other guys are still in the minors unless they called them up recently. I still think they're in AAA.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of signing a shortstop or a third baseman, they traded for Josh Donaldson and Isaiah Kiner Falefa.
Yeah.
You know, they try to outsmart the system. Donaldson looked okay like his first year. He's looked awful this year. I mean, he hasn't even played for the past month. They put him on that phantom IL to kick him to the rocks. But they had the opportunity to sign like 2 or 3 players that have said previously that they wanted to play for the Yankees. I mean, I'll say one right away. Bryce Harper, when he wrote back in like when he was a teenager, he said, I always wanted to play in pinstripes. They had an opportunity to sign him.
Yeah.
I don't care if the outfield's crowded. That's Bryce Harper. You sign him and you figure it out after. All right. He went to a different type of pinstripes. He went to red pinstripes.
Better
So you
pinstripe.
lost out on him. Manny Machado definitely wanted to be a Yankee. I
That's
thought
a
he was
Yan-
going to be a Yankee. He is a Yankee.
Yes.
He's the mentality of the old school Yankees. Well, unfortunately, he went to the brown pinstripes.
The other
Brown,
Yankee.
yellow. I don't know what you want to talk about. The Yankee wannabes. I don't know. So they don't get him. And then they have a shortstop class these past 2 off seasons with Corey Seager, Carlos Correa, Trey Turner, Xander Bogaerts, and they went, or even Dansby Swanson. I'll throw all 5 of those the past 2 off seasons.
Disrespect Dansby.
And they didn't sign anybody. And these prospects have a lot to live up to now to these Yankees fans, because now you're saying, I've heard it too much too often that these Yankees fans that are like, I have this prospect, he's untouchable, he's going to be this type of player. I've yet to see that. None of their prospects besides Judge has seemed to turn out to do anything. So, and that's a pretty big concern of mine about them.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. Like you said, you're in a win. I mean, they're constantly in a win now mode. They were a good team the last 3, 4, 5 years. The years all these guys were coming out, and you're not signing it. You're waiting on I know they're top prospects, but come on, man. It's like you said, it's fucking Bryce Harper. Hey, it's Trey Turner. It's Carlos Correa. It's Dansby Swanson. Like these guys could go win you games right now. I just don't know. I like Cash, like you said, Cashman has a lot of tenure and good winning seasons and a lot of rep in the game. But when do you start like thinking like, hey, we're winners here. Like we got to try at least. I don't think he's on the hot seat now, but man, it's gonna be weird if they finish under 500.
Yeah, and before we go on to the next subject, but like just the Yankees, what happened to that mentality of like, let's go get the best players and then figure it out after?
Yeah.
Like they traded for A-Rod when they already had a shortstop in Jeter, and then they did the shuffling. Like I see teams like the Dodgers now, like we've seen them make those moves. Like, all right, well they already had a shortstop in Seager. Well, they traded for Turner because of the fucking Dodgers, and they plan on winning the World Series. Like they plan on going all in, and they figure it out after.
Right.
And you're not only a good GM, not only looks at this season, they look at the next like 3 or 4 seasons. And I'll always look back to that Trey Turner Scherzer trade and just say that's probably the best trade a GM could make, because not only did you supplement, you got 2 really good shortstops, you moved one to second, power infield. Then when you knew one of those shortstops was leaving, you just plug and play with the other. And the Yankees, it seems like they're afraid to do that. They don't want to trade for superstars anymore. Like I love Stan, but even when they traded for him, I mean, I was like, I wasn't blown away. I was like, all right, it's just Giancarlo Stanton, like he hits some good homers. He'll definitely benefit from playing at Yankee Stadium, but they don't scare me. Like it's funny to say that because when you talk to anybody that's older than us, they're like, yeah, the Yankees, like that's the team, man. That's a team to be scared of. But I think we've seen with modern baseball that they're just not that team anymore. And I think we see in baseball now and in sports in general, it's hard to be that team because each team is getting more and more competitive. So maybe we don't see like that dominance anymore if teams go into multiple World Series in a row and winning them. Maybe that's over. But I think from a Yankees standpoint, anything short of World Series these next couple years is just automatic failure. If they finish under 500 this year, Cashman and he stays, he's definitely got to be on the hot seat next year. But I think there's a good chance that they may move on. But I don't know. It's really up to the owner. It's the same owner, the same family that's owned the Yankees for a while now. So they all have a good relationship. So maybe he's just one of those guys that's just a tenured professor up there now. Like his job's safe until he dies. So
Yeah, I like what you said. I think what they're trying to do is like build a new generation of Yankees. Like they're trying to recreate what happened. So that's why they're putting all the trust in their guys. But like you said, it's a new age. Like it's not the 1990s. Like it's not. You're not gonna find 7 guys and like you said, every team's doing all these things. They're hiring the right people. There's so much technology and analytics out there. You're not going to be able to steal 7 studs. Like it's not going to happen.
yeah.
You're not going to develop 7 studs. Like you need to go buy players. You need to go find good players, but also find great players. I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, moving on. Staying in the American League East. The Orioles, they are off to a really, really good year. I mean, last year they were the storyline of baseball, barely missing the playoffs. A lot of their prospects, Rutschman, Mountcastle. I mean, we got Gunnar Henderson this year. They're all really blossoming, turning into really good MLB stars, and they're finding a variety of ways to win. I mean, the fans, they're probably some of the best fans in baseball. I mean, you were there, like we mentioned at a previous episode, but just when they were in the playoffs, though, in like 2014, 15, and 16, they showed up to the ballpark when there's a good product on the field, and they finally have that good product on the field again. But they've kind of been in the news for other reasons, not the team themselves, like the players, but mainly the owners have been causing a lot of controversy. So obviously, we saw the Kevin Brown thing, the Orioles broadcaster. He ended up getting suspended because he talked about how bad they were playing at Tropicana Field the past like 5 or 6 years, which to his credit, I mean, everyone's already talked about it. The Orioles were bad. Bad teams play bad baseball against good teams, and the Rays have been one of those good teams the past 6 years. But the thing that pissed me off the most was the thing with owner, let's see what his name is, John Angelos. He warned that the price to keep these players is gonna be extremely high, and that if they want them to keep these players long term, that they should expect like big price hikes in pretty much everything, whether it's tickets, merchandise, food, concessions, and all that. Um, Kind of playing victim, where he knows that these players, once they reach their arbitration years and once they get to the pending free agents, um, they're going to want big time money. And the Orioles, they're not the smallest market team, but they are the last. I think they're bottom in payroll this year. Um, I just think it's kind of annoying when we hear owners talk publicly about this type of stuff. And it's kind of weird because this ownership group, they don't really talk much to their fans. They were saying, I saw on Twitter, this is like the first time publicly comments that they've made in like probably 2 or 3 years. Like they kind of go out of the blue. So I'm kind of interested to see what your thoughts are on the Orioles kind of playing cheap.
I think it's stupid. I hate it. Like in a league that's going towards like the Braves kind types of contracts, like it's going to be long term deals, big money. Um, even like free agent deals now. Long contracts, maybe not as high AAV, but they're getting paid. And I wrote down a list. I mean, you have Mountcastle Henderson, you have Adley Rutschman, you have Austin Hayes, you have Grayson Rodriguez, you have Felix Bautista, you have Colton Cowser, you have Jordan Westberg. All those guys are going to get a lot of money. Like, there's no question. So what is he doing? What is John Angelos doing? Is he trying to set the city up to be like, hey, like, don't be mad at me when they leave, or like, is he trying to be like, hey, don't be mad at me when I raise prices? Like what is his plan here? I don't know what's gonna happen. I just think it's stupid that you go through all these years of being bad, like Mr. Brown said, and then just fire sale everybody? Like, are they gonna play 5 years for you and then be like, oh, it's your contract year, like, oh, get out? Like, is that what's gonna happen? Like, I don't understand what he's saying. You can't. The price raises are not gonna affect it enough to cover, 7 guys making $100 million a year. So
Yeah.
like, I don't understand what he's trying to do here.
Yeah. I mean, basic economics would tell you, yes, obviously. I mean, we've been to Dodger Stadium. We know that the price hikes were high there. And that's just a premium that these better teams that have higher payrolls, you kind of expect that. Like I've seen it even in Philly the past couple of years compared to like what 2016, 17 when the Phillies were bottom in the league compared to now. I mean, what was that? What was that? There was like that tea thing that I told you about before. It was like $20 for just a little
Oh
can.
yeah, dude.
Yeah, and I said, all right, well, never mind. Yeah, you're doing that to sign these players, but like you said, you're not going to sign 7 of these guys. They are going to have to choose. Like even teams like the Dodgers, they're not going to sign. I've seen it. They haven't signed everybody they wanted. They've let players walk away. Like Bellinger isn't on the team. Seager isn't on the team. A bunch of the other guys that have been fan favorites of mine. They no longer play for the Dodgers. So even big market teams can't keep everybody, but I think you have to play smart. And I like the thing, the Braves, they're holding their players hostage probably when they sign these contracts, but that's something that's feasible for the Orioles to do. That's something feasible every team can do is, all right, Gunnar Henderson looking like he's going to win Rookie of the Year. Why not reward him with that and give him like an 8-year deal? And you're getting him on the low end, and you're getting him for 8 years. You're getting him for 2 years past his arbitration years. You're essentially buying out his arbitration years, and that's something that the Braves have done with all of their players. It's something the Dodgers have done with a bunch of their players, where they pay for their arbitration years. That way, they don't have to go to arbitration with them. And they already get them with that solid AAV. Um, it's kind of sad because I feel like the Orioles have done it right. They've done the rebuild right. They've taken their time. They developed these prospects, and we're seeing it pay off last year, and we're definitely seeing it pay off this year, where it looks like they're going to be the number 1 seed, and that's saying something because last year, at the beginning of the season, I thought maybe they would make the playoffs. I didn't think they were going to be the number 1 seed. And it's looking like it's lining up that way. And it's thanks to the development from the Orioles. I mean, they don't have really good pitching, but this group of hitters, and there's still so many more that are coming up. It gets me really excited if I was an Orioles fan. And even just living by there, you kind of see it now. You've been there. It's an electric environment, and I feel good for him. But then when I see stupid stuff with like the owners and like this and stuff, it's like you own an MLB team. Like every MLB team is valued over $1 billion.
Billions.
Yeah, like the O's in 2022. They're valued at $1.71 billion, which is kind of in the middle
Right.
of Major League Baseball. It's at 18. And then teams that have lower payrolls than them that are still competitive. You got the Rays, D-backs, the A's in their golden days. They were really good. They can get it done with lower payrolls. Even the Brewers can get it done with lower payrolls. You don't have to spend big money to be competitive. And we've seen it fall this year, like the Yankees and the Mets, the two New York high market teams, they failed and they both were, I believe, were like 1 and 2 in payroll this year. So I don't know. You don't have to spend to win, but you have to be smart on who you spend it on. So, like you said, they're not going to sign everybody, but they have to choose the right guys. But at least put an effort out there to try to keep these guys. Don't ruin the vibe now when we're like 5 years before you actually have to make these decisions. Um, keep your mouth shut. Just enjoy the ride. So that's all I could say about the Orioles.
The Orioles are sick, man. It's so fun to watch that team because they're all young, just running around, hitting the ball hard. I agree with you. They're gonna have to pick, obviously. Um, you can still pick a lot of them. Like you can pick most of them. You probably could get 5 or 6 of those guys.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the Braves did it. So
the Braves did. I mean, the Dodgers have signed most of their guys. Except for the guys they trade for and things like that. But you can keep your core, man. It's just frustrating, like you said, to see this already. It's like, what's your plan, bro? Like, what are you trying to get at here? Like, we're literally on a playoff run, like you said, probably gonna get the 1 seed. But let's talk about all of our young guys leaving because this is the best time to do that. Like, I just don't get what's going on over there.
yeah. All right. Well, speaking of young, Wander Franco. I'm just kidding. No, we're not talking about Wander this time. We're gonna end the episode on a high note. Um,
Hell yeah.
kind of quick here, just to wrap everything up. Obviously, we got two really young players that are really stepping it up this year. We already talked about one a little bit earlier in Julio Rodriguez. But another guy that's been playing really good baseball this year that's really stepped up, that me and you have kind of been watching since we were in high school,
I'm a
kind
club
of
boy.
seeing him come up, getting through the ranks. Bobby Witt Jr., man, he's been having one of the under the radar seasons for a shortstop. He's starting to play that top 5 to top 3 shortstops now, especially with a couple other guys having down years like Carlos Correa. Like he can jump a couple of these guys in 2024 when we start thinking of, all right, who's the best MLB shortstop? So that begs the question, if you were going to start a team, what guy are you taking? Are you taking Bobby Witt or are you taking Julio Rodriguez?
I'm gonna do the thing again where I don't answer the question. I'm gonna
Now
make
you
you
gotta
answer.
answer it. You have to answer it.
So, Bobby Witt Jr., like you said, the Diamond Club boy, a Diamond Club boy. 4.3 WAR at shortstop, high 280 average, 37 stolen bases, a ton of RBIs, hitting for power, not as many strikeouts as you would think. It's like 100, I think. 100 percentile in outs above average, 100 percentile in sprint speed. He's just that guy. He's another guy like Kyle Tucker that can do basically everything, but at a more prime position at shortstop. Yeah, it's a really good year. I want to go out on a limb and start comparing people. I want to be that guy. So my comparison to Bobby Witt is a Troy Tulowitzki type guy. I think Troy Tulowitzki didn't have as much speed as him, obviously, but a 300 plus hitter career. He's Bobby Witt's gonna hit 300 every year of his career for the next 8 years, probably. Around 30 homers, good defensive shortstop. We'll have all-star seasons. Prime Torey Tulowitzki is what I expect out of Bobby Witt. He's been this hyped up for so long. I would expect that. But moving on to Julio, he's having a really close year to what he's having what he had last year. He's hitting around 280, a bunch of RBIs, bunch of home runs, 21 home runs, ton of stolen bases. He's carrying that Mariners team, like you said earlier. Really good defender out in the outfield, of course. Really fun. I would say that Julio hits the ball harder. But he whiffs more, so he strikes out more. He's got 148 strikeouts as of yesterday. But like we
Free
saw,
swinger.
yeah, he's a free swinger, and that's good when you get hot, man. Because like we saw, 16 hits. It was like 17 out of 21 or something at one point. I think he's really, really good. My comparison was Carlos Beltran. I think another guy that does a lot of things right. I think Julio has more pop in his bat than Bobby. I think that's one of the big things that I like about him. I think he could be a 40 home run guy, like maybe not consistently, but every other year, every third year, something like that eventually. Again, elite speed, elite defender in the outfield. That's what Carlos Beltran did for you. But yeah, man, really two really good perennial all stars, MVP candidates. Um, a little bit less swing and miss out of Bobby, a little bit more pop out of Julio.
Yeah. So who you taking?
You first.
All right, I'll tell you. I honestly, the Carlos Beltran comparison, that's big because I don't think many people, like, obviously, like, we didn't really watch him because we're on the young side. So we didn't really get to see him during his like prime years, but just watch him when he was like that short stint with the Astros and then the Mets and then his early career with the Cardinals. Like, talk about a guy that
Electric.
had like he had speed back then. He was a good overall hitter, and J Rod is on that trajectory too. I said he was having a really bad start to the year. Well, because of how hot he's been since the midway point of the year, he's kind of gotten his stats back up to similar production to last year. He's got around 20 home runs. He's batting around the 280 mark, like you said. Oddly enough, I looked at the Baseball Savant page and then it got updated. Um, Julio is 98 in sprint speed. Bobby Witt's 99, and they updated it. O'Neal Cruz is the 100 guy, is the
What?
100th sprint. So I guess I figured he was going to be dethroned just because, I mean, looking at Cruz run, he's got that long stride. You got to look at him, man.
Yeah,
He's
look at
fast,
O'Neal
dude.
Cruz.
Yeah. So I like Julio. I just think it's a lot easier to get outfield production from the minor leagues now.
Yeah.
And I've seen it time and time again. And then what usually happens with these outfield power bats, same thing that happened to Carlos Beltran. They start to slow down. Obviously, you lose your speed first, put on a little bit more weight, get some more muscle, then you turn to power bat. And Julio is a guy that I think once his speed, if it starts to diminish, he could probably start hitting like 40 home runs like every year, especially in like the prime to late of his career. Kind of like Trout, like Trout was like kind of that guy that had the speed. He wasn't hitting as many bombs, but he could get you. And now when Trout is in like a full healthy year, he's not stealing as many bases. He's not as fast as he used to, but he has a chance if he's a full healthy. Like we look at 2019, he was, I think he was top in the league in homers. Like he can hit like 40, 45, 50 if he wants to, if he's healthy.
I agree.
But Bobby Witt, dude, the wheels on that guy, playing shortstop. I didn't realize how hard it was to find a shortstop for your team until Trey Turner left. Because then, we had the Lux thing and then Lux died. And then Rojas, I love Rojas. He's good defensively, but he can't hit.
Ooh.
And I would still have obviously Bobby Witt. Like if I'm going to choose a guy, I'm choosing the captain of the infield. I'm choosing a shortstop. And Bobby Witt kind of reminds me of Trey Turner in a way where I think Trey Turner, when he first started out in his career, he wasn't the high average hitter. And then he ended up starting to get in the race for batting titles. I definitely think Bobby Witt can do that. Especially this season, he's shown a lot more balance in his swing. It seems like he rather, instead of beating with the home run, he'd rather put the ball in play, get into a gap, use his legs to his advantage, which I don't know how fast his speed would go away, but he's young, and he's the one bright spot for the Royals. So I think if I had to pick today, it would be really close, but I would say Bobby Witt.
Yeah, I think it was unfair for us to do this like this because
Yeah.
I was hoping you were going to say Julio. I agree with you with Bobby Witt. I won't touch on the fact that he's a shortstop because I agree, and I don't want to talk about it because I'm now a center fielder, I would say. But I think the bigger thing for me is just the eye test. Julio's electric, yeah, I know, but you know who else was electric? Okay, we'll take out this year. You know who else was electric? Cody Bellinger. And he had that wild swing, that was, kind of unique. He had a lot of talent, but it wasn't always consistent. Things like that. I think Bobby Witt swings just repeatable. I think he just the things he does is so in a routine, and he's from the baseball family. I think it's more likely that he will be consistent for a longer period of time than Julio, but I think Julio might have a little bit of a higher ceiling.
All right. I think it's finally time we indoctrinate Bobby Witt Jr. We claim him as a Diamond Club boy.
We got to
Um,
start
he
getting like jerseys
he
or something.
he joins the class of recently inducted Michael Lorenzen as
Yeah,
another
right.
Diamond Club boy. But yeah, it's definitely a big debate. I like when you get to it's a conversation to have with superstars that are coming up, and they're just it seems like right when they come out and debut, like when they're 19, 20, 21, they end up just taking the world by storm, and pretty much they end up becoming the best players in the league. It just sucks that Witt's on the Royals, and it just seems like they don't have any sense of direction. So hopefully they figure it out, or hopefully he finds a competitive team when he's a free agent in a couple of years. So it's good to end it on a high note for this episode compared to last time, talking about the whole Wander Franco mess. Um, but American League, a lot of interesting stuff that we talked about here, going from Otani to the American League West. Definitely conversations about the Yankees and the Orioles and all that. It's definitely shaping up to be a nice October for both the American League and National League. So it's definitely something we'll be touching on more as we get closer to October. That'll do it for this episode of ClubCast. We will be back same time next week. All right. I'm out.
Bye, guys.